Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Bourgeot. I'm the United States Country Coordinator of the GLOBE program. For those of you joining us online through YouTube because you missed out on the in-person experience of finding out where everybody wants to be dropped off for a day and picked up later. Um, I'm very sorry you're missing that because Haley will cut that piece out. But if I could say where I would want to be for a day, it's making the trip to drop all of you off and picking you up so that I can hear all the stories at the end. Um, I think that would be the best part because then I get to experience all of them. And yes, I broke my own rule, and that was not one word, but I am the host and I can do whatever I want. Okay, so I would like to introduce Jamie Larsen, who has been with Globe on and off for years, it seems. Um, and it is absolutely wonderful to have him talk about this because someday we're going to make this happen. Jamie, we're gonna get this to work with Globe and have a whole bunch of people pick up the XR AR thing and really see some students do this. I know it. That is my off in the distance vision. And so I'm really excited though about this because it's also systems thinking, which is really one of my big interests as well. So I'm really excited that you're here. Everyone here got to see the materials that I sent out, I believe, in advance. I got some shakes and nods on that. So are you ready to introduce yourself? And you can also tell us where you would like to be dropped off for one day. You get everything you need to be comfortable and happy that day, so you don't have to worry about that. So if you want to introduce yourself with that, it's welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's a big challenge, but my name is Jamie Larsen. I work for TERC out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. I live in Seattle, Washington. I did work with Globe on several projects in the deep past, which Flexi from local to extreme environments was a project I worked on, and that was fun. And I don't recognize any faces here, so I don't know how far back many of you go, but the place I would like to be dropped off of is a place that I got to go to when I was working for Globe on Flexi. I got to go into Alvin and go down to a hydrothermal vent, and I would love to do that again because it was a once in a lifetime experience. So 2 words, hydrothermal vent. So that's where I'd like to go. So Jennifer, make that happen, and I'm there. So I don't know how, so what I wanted to talk to everybody about, so my role at TERC is I'm a researcher, curriculum developer. I'm currently working on several projects. My big project is an NSF funded ASIL project where we're actually looking at the affordances of virtual reality for neurodiverse learners. And we are creating it's called Mission to Europa Prime, a game where you can go and you can explore a science center on Europa. And interestingly enough, we're theorizing that there are hydrothermal vents down in the bottom of Europa and some interesting life forms that might be down there. And so that's the hook of the game. And then we're going to see how effective VR is to work with neurodiverse learners. We're co-designing it with Landmark students at Landmark College, which is fun. They're in Massachusetts. Some of you from Massachusetts I think it's Massachusetts or New Hampshire. I get those two mixed up because they're mushed together. But I will be out in the Boston area next week. In New Hampshire area. So if any of you are in that area, I'd be more than happy to even meet you in person with a mask, of course. Jennifer, maybe we can get together. It would be good. So that's probably my biggest project right now. I've got a couple smaller projects going. My interest as of probably over the last 5 to 10 years has been XR technologies, the use of augmented reality, the use of virtual reality, extended reality, whichever acronym you want to use, XR, VR, AR. And how it can be used as a lever to get kids outside, which is, I was a middle school and high school teacher for many years, and my whole focus, and one reason GLOBE always resonated with me, is it got kids outside, which I think is probably the most important thing we can do now. And the two items I shared with you, and I'd be happy to take questions or walk through if some of you haven't seen it, the two ideas. But the two things I shared with you was one, SysAR, which is a small internally funded project we have where I'm looking to use augmented reality to get students and other learners to create simple systems models that can be geolocated outside. So basically for them to ask questions, to identify parts in a system and create a very simple systems model that they could then run and see how it works, and then discuss it with fellow classmates, discuss it with their teacher. But ultimately the idea is to be able to geolocate them and then create some kind of app that lets you discover them out in the real world. My reasoning for that is I think if anything, the pandemic has shown us we don't understand systems thinking, we don't understand systems models. And I think part of that is that we oftentimes teach them in the isolation of the classroom, and it takes a long time to learn how to do even the simplest systems model, and so oftentimes we stay away from it. GLOBE is very good at using systems thinking and systems modeling, so hopefully this is a tool that you think might resonate. We are building a minimally viable product, so a proof of concept that we're going to conduct some research with a few students and some educators to see what they like, what they don't like, and then go out and search for funding either through NSF and other funding agencies if that research seems to warrant further work on this project. And we've been working with the Institute for Systems Biology out here in Seattle. If you're not familiar with them, they do an amazing job working with kids, mostly high school kids and educators, on teaching them systems thinking. And I can forward some links to Jennifer, and she can send them out to you, of some of the things that the kids at the Institutes for Systems Biology are working on. And it's a really good group to know about if you don't. And I can connect you with their director of education or curriculum lead there if you want. Also have been working with Jamie Cloud of the Cloud Institute of Sustainability, who's a good name in systems modeling and systems thinking. And her and I started talking about, I introduced this idea to her at a drawdown project conference several years ago, and she's given me feedback on it, and so she's been one of the ones that's helped me think about it. The other project that I sent you and shared with you was an XR project using a product called ThingLink to create annotated stills and videos where you can embed learning, or you can embed tours of local areas. And I presented that at the Globe conference in Ireland. How many years ago was that, Jennifer? That was like 4 years ago. In COVID years, it's probably 100, but yeah. And I presented that over there. I don't know if any of you were at that conference or not, but I presented the workshop on how to use ThingLink. There are some links in the document that I sent you that I built a ThingLink annotated tour of the locks over here by my house and showed how a GLOBE educator might use it. And I think it's a pretty powerful tool to use to tell data stories, GLOBE data stories, and to get kids to build those. And so that activity is something that, you know, I'd love for GLOBE educators to use. And if they use, certainly share it out with me. I know the ThingLink people would share them out. They're constantly improving that tool. Used to be Google Expeditions was a tool that was on the market. And of course, like Google often does, they have a pretty good tool and then they abandon it. It's gone. So ThingLink is the only sort of tool available, I think, that's really lets you annotate some 360 images and get fairly creative with it. They've just added the ability to do conditional branching to it, so you can ask questions and then branch off depending upon what the answers are. They've also recently added the ability to embed 3D images, so you can scan an image and embed it in the thing links. You can embed forms to fill out if you want to. I mean, it's a great way to embed data and get kids to explain data. I think oftentimes, I think one of the things we need is to help kids be better storytellers, and I think this is a tool, a technology tool that does that quite well. Yeah, there is a thing link Facebook page. I'm really bad at Zoom where I have to look at all these faces there and then monitor the chat and everything. I once taught a class of 35 kids, and it's like, man, my heart goes out to teachers that are in there doing Zoom classrooms. It's like, I don't know if I could do that now, but anyway, so if something comes up on the chat, Jennifer, that I need to pay attention, just interrupt me. And all of you should feel free to interrupt me, either raise your hand or just jump in if you have a question, because I'll tend to go on if I'm allowed to. Anyway, I think I can talk about either or. The thing about SysAR that I'd really like is if people have questions about the SysAR tool. The idea is it's an easy tool to use where you can go out with an iPad. You can do it on an iPhone, but the screen is too small. Did you give me the ability to share my screen, Jen? Oh, good. Now I just have to find it. Desktop 2. So you should be able to see my slideshow, and basically I'll just go through this real quickly. The idea is that you can use the camera on the iPad, and then touching the iPad, you can identify the parts of the system. So you just touch it to create what's called a node. And you can change the color of the node. You can change the size of the amount of the material in the node, the size of the dot in the node. You can give it a name. So in this case, I created one called asphalt, and then I created another one called trees. You can also put text into the picture. So in this case, I'm saying I want kids to go out and answer the question, what impact will building more parking at my local park have on the environment? And this is actually a picture of a park about half a mile from my house, where they are talking about expanding the parking, which means taking down trees and things. And so it's a perfect kind of systems question to get kids out there to identify the parts, see how they're connected, and then run simple models to hypothesize or theorize what might happen if you do change this. And it's again, it's a very simple model. So once you build it, you can then, once you define the nodes, you can then connect the nodes basically by touching one of the nodes and drawing an arrow over to the other. You can give that arrow a positive or negative value, so that if you, in this case, if I increase the asphalt, that's going to cause the amount of trees to shrink because I have to take trees away. And here's a simple model that I just threw together that allows me to build the system and then run it, play with it to see what happens. So what I did here was I created asphalt. I started with a small amount of asphalt. The size of the circles indicates the amount of something. I started with a large amount of trees. I said the temperature is low, and this doesn't get into quantifying things. It's just sort of a greater overview. And then I connected trees to the amount of CO2 in the environment. And again, my question was, what impact will building more parking at my local park have? When you click play, then you can, I wish I could show this to you on my iPad, but this app doesn't play very well on Zoom, and so it doesn't show up when I'm changing things. But if I click on the upper arrow on asphalt, that causes the amount of trees to go down. because you have to remove trees. It causes the temperature to go up, and again, it's not quantified. And as the trees go down, it causes the amount of CO2 in the air to in this case go up, because the trees are taking less CO2 out of the atmosphere. Again, very simple, but this kind of modeling can allow you to then ask questions, have kids explain them, and then start to pick the model apart. What can you add to it? What can you subtract to it? What are its limits? How can you improve it? And just get kind of playful with the idea. Ultimately, what we want to do is then, you should be able to then create even larger models. This is a model of an area around Seattle where there was a lot of abandoned land, and people came in and said, what if we recaptured this land by putting in little urban farms? What kind of impact would that have? So this is a model that I threw together about what might happen if you take land that's been abandoned and take useless land and turn it into useful land by creating local farms. What kind of an impact would that have on the overall system? And the things I linked in here were, you could grow vegetables that could lead people that live in that area to have better access to vegetables. They don't have to truck them in, might let them have, help them to have better diets, which could have an impact on their health. It could have an impact on air pollution if you're putting more plants in the area, doing less building, things like that. And then ultimately the idea is to create systems models that you can then geolocate for others to find, even to the point of people could find them, either comment on them, but also add their own models, maybe add to the models that you place out there. So the idea is to kind of put this ability to discover systems models and systems thinking in the world outside where you can make sense of it. So, and it can be used, these are two examples that are tied kind of into environmental issues and ecosystem, but you can use this to think of things like, here in Seattle, homelessness is huge. You can use it to create a systems model that might be tied to homelessness. It could be tied to social justice issues. You can, as you all probably know, systems thinking and systems modeling is a very powerful tool that isn't just confined to what we do at Globe. It's a very powerful way to look at the world. You could do something having to do with the pandemic. I had a friend that used this to play around to think about how people interact in life in downtown Seattle, and what does that mean relative to spreading disease. And actually some of the kids at Institute for Systems Biology use a more powerful tool to do some systems modeling around the pandemic. They ultimately, the tool will have, we hope, will have some background on systems modeling. It'll have an audio capability so that you could record what your story is about and stuff. So the idea is to create a model, a simple model that you can share with others to help facilitate the understanding of systems thinking and systems modeling. So I can try to play a little video where I captured the model working so you can see how it flows. Is that something that you'd like to see? Yes? Okay. I just have to find it. So this should show you do you see the model of that I built about Discovery Park that I just showed you? So what's going to happen is I'm going to hit play, and unfortunately, and what you're going to see is the amount of asphalt is going to go up as I increase the parking lot, build more parking lot, and the amount of trees should go down, and then the amount of CO2 in the environment should go up, and the temperature should go up. Again, very simple model. What you do once you build a model is you hit play, and then you click on the up arrow, and arrows come out to show exactly what's happening. So then I clicked it again. And you can create feedback loops and everything off of this, so you can get fairly complex, but I just built a very simple model. And then you might say, well, what happens if I had a lot of asphalt and then I click the down button? What's going to happen? And that's going to increase the amount of trees. And it should affect the temperature. So you get the idea is you can play with it in a variety of ways. And again, this is a simple model, but you can build fairly complex models, and you might even use it to have two kids work on a similar problem. One might work on one aspect of the model and another kid might work on another aspect, and then have them compare them, and then even make a big model together, or connect the two models together. So that's basically it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to take questions, especially to clarify anything I've said that's unclear. But I'm really interested in, just from what you see, is this something that you think you might be able to use if it were built out? Is it something that makes sense for what Globe's doing? There's one of the ideas is we would love to possibly make it more, quantify it more. I mean, there's some more powerful tools out there. But the first step is to create a minimally viable product that we can get feedback on to see if it's worth building out. And then, of course, the small thing, finding funding. So are there any questions, comments?
Mike's hand is raised.
Oh, okay.
Jamie, it's very, very, very cool. I wondered if you mentioned feedback loops.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if what your thinking was. I'm just struggling. I'm trying to think of where when I try to do systems thinking, systems modeling with students, that the idea of feedback loops is really important.
Right.
And so the idea of a positive or a negative, like in your example for the asphalt, right? I wonder if there's a way to, or what your thinking was, if there was a way to sort of avoid that conflating of those two things.
Yeah, which is always a problem when you're teaching systems thinking, right? The whole positive and negative aspect.
And that was way too harsh, Jamie. I didn't mean what.
No.
I'm not.
No,
that word conflating was the first word that came in my head, and that's a little harsh, I think.
Yeah, no, but this comes up in anytime you're teaching systems thinking and modeling, no matter the level, because it's kind of intuitively there's oftentimes a disconnect with it. Well, if it's is a negative, is that a good thing? Or if it's a positive, is that a good thing? But that's all part of the discussion you can have with this. In this case, the negative means is it reduces what it's feeding into, right? And a positive means that it increases it. So, but you can use that currently, you can use that as a level to discuss what does that mean in terms of feedback loop. It also lets you identify, well, if we have this system, where are the leverage points? Where should I focus my effort if I want to have to optimize the changes that I hope to accomplish, So for this one, it might be, well, if I'm really worried about heat islands, I might want to reduce the amount of asphalt and increase the number of trees. If I'm thinking about, the ability of outdoor spaces to inspire people or to provide habitat, then I could concentrate on the trees and increase the amount of trees that are there. But I think the power of the tool is to ask questions like that and then wrestle how best to deal with it. How could I change this model so it's more reflective of the real world? Does that make sense?
Oh, no, it makes perfect sense. Is you were clicking to run the models, is it recording what your
so in this case, no, because again, it's a minimally viable product, which means we had a very small chunk of money and we were building what we can. Right. But ultimately, what so you create the model, and then when you geolocate it, somebody else can go be there and play that model, so they can play with the model. The other thing is, one of the things that would be nice to have is a behavior over time graph that is created as you're doing it, because that's an important part of systems thinking and systems modeling. And there's no reason that you couldn't record. Well, you could actually, as it stands now on the iPad, you could set up so that it records when you're doing the model and then create a QuickTime video. That's what I did here, actually, is I just captured this video.
Yeah, I guess my question, Jamie, was, you made choices. I'm going to increase or decrease one of the variables, and you could get to a place, right, where, in a sense, a positive turns out to be negative, right? You get to a place, to a tipping point, right, where, so that'd be very cool if there was a way to record what their decisions were.
Right. And there's, you know, that's one of the things that, you know, being able to record audio that you could play back as this is playing, like you could attach to the node, you know, what is my thinking, that you could click on a button on each node that would explain, well, my thinking here is this. I mean, minimally, it's kind of a tool to have for a teacher to use in the classroom, have a kid build a model or outside, and then have the kid walk you through the model and then, you know, go back and forth on it. But recording what that thought is in creating this model is that's something that we would like to have in the future, so that you could tell a story as the model as your experience in the model that you found out in the real world. So yeah, we have lots of features we want to add to it. But.
Just a quick comment, if I may.
Sure.
I came to Globe and I came to US and joined the education workforce coming from engineering. So I studied the system dynamics in different language, and I'm still so I was too naive to really think that the language in system dynamics is sort of neutral, but it's not. So and to me, what Mike just talked to you about, if I got through a different language translation in my head.
Yes.
So what worked for me, but it really depends on the student learning style.
Right.
So for some, system thinking at that level that you described might work well.
Yeah.
But for someone like myself included, what works best when we actually quantify it and go to the system dynamics level,
right.
And then we will develop when we go even further and develop maybe complex, but still develop the visualization. So
right.
that really bring it home to me and someone like myself who really appreciates that. So in terms of usability, here in US, I started from system dynamics when I don't know, since you mentioned you in Massachusetts, I'm not sure if you recall that we built a system dynamics model of what was sponsored by Raytheon when we were trying to model K-12 educational system in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So I came into this from the sort of policy perspective.
Right.
But I'm very much, yes, and we just concluded last week 5 weeks of training for educators here in Massachusetts. Very extensive, 5 weeks long. We collaborate with MIT on this and System Dynamics Society.
Sure.
So anyway, where are you going with this next? I mean, what is your wish list, so to speak?
So a couple comments. One, you know, my introduction to systems thinking, systems modeling, systems dynamic was through Forrester and you know, a lot of MIT folks. You know, Jamie Cloud is linked up with those folks, but you know, there's a long there's a big step between this and that level, but introducing kids to simple systems models and systems thinking and systems modeling, it's kind of it's a stepping stone that could then open them up to you know, more complex systems modeling
Sure.
apps, you know, Stella, you know, there's any number of them out there. And then in between this and something like a Stella, Concord Consortium has, I think CodeApp is what it's called. They might have rebranded it something else, which lets you quantify things a bit more. So, but getting them hooked on thinking about the parts in the system and connecting them and actually modeling them, especially when you're out in the real world and placing them in the real world, I think is a really vital step. And so where we want to go from here is, you know, we now can get into some classrooms and test it out. You know, we've been waiting to be able to go into classrooms. There's something that's out in the real world that's keeping us from going in there now, COVID or something.
Excellent.
And so we're going to test it out and get feedback on it, and then try to find further funding to start to develop it out, and then do some real research on its effectiveness. You know, does it, how does it change kids' view of the world outside and better connected to systems thinking?
Yeah, I'm 1000% with you and everybody on the same page in that regard. In fact, I struggled when I came to US to understand why in education this is not sort of a foundational point where we start our education. And it's just, I sort of did a reverse engineering because I forced myself to go back to different sort of perspective and try to live without system dynamics approach, which was hard by itself. But anyway, we're trying to bring it to Globe as we work with sustainable development goals. And obviously, you know, the very sophisticated models, they publicly available, but we're trying to figure out from what angle we can bring it down to the globe sort of level. And especially now with a new infusion of science diplomacy from United Nations, there is a massive effort on bringing system dynamics into K-12. So thank you for the work you do.
Well, and the interesting thing is I'm old enough to remember when systems thinking, what we did in the US think that system thinking was a K through 12 type of activity. And there was a big movement, Waters Foundation, a lot of people in New Hampshire. I can't remember the name of the group up in New Hampshire that did a lot of work with systems thinking and systems modeling. But in Arizona, there were actually, there was a school district that adopted systems thinking and modeling K through 12. And one of the things, I have to be careful here, because one of the things that frustrates me is that we're very focused on computational thinking, which is great. You know, my group at TERC, we do a lot of things with computational thinking. You know, there's a lot of emphasis out there on teaching computational thinking. But my feeling, and I only speak for myself, is that we've given up systems thinking. And you can argue that systems thinking is a component, systems modeling is a component of computational thinking, but it's kind of lost in the curriculum right now.
Totally agree with you, and I struggle with it myself. And I wonder if you can remember the name of the school district, if there are any of those educators still working if they retired already. I don't know.
No, so the Waters Foundation is a good resource, and I can look up I don't have it at the tip of my tongue right now, but I'll look it up. Sure. And I'll send it to you. I'll put together a few resources that I'm familiar with that are great. I mean, there's some brilliant resources out there that you know, Jamie Cloud's website is a good one to go to. Another really good, Linda Booth Sweeney has a good website on systems thinking and systems modeling. This is actually a brilliant book, When a Butterfly Sneezes, which uses children's stories to teach systems thinking and systems, just to start to understand systems thinking. So there's lots of really good, powerful pieces out there. We're just not using them. And we see the problem of this rear, you know, it's ugly head every day. You know, people are still arguing, is climate change a real thing? And, you know, their models are all wrong. And you know, one of the best presentations I ever saw was when I was at Globe and we went over to NOAA, and they talked about how models have evolved over time. And it's just, you know, your ability to identify more and more parts of a model and then figure out how they work, quantify them, so we get better and better at predicting. But if you've never been introduced to simple systems thinking and simple systems modeling, somebody can come along and say they don't work. You know, they're always wrong. They're not 100%.
Thank you. I don't want to occupy the floor, but thank you very much.
Paperclip simulation is a great one. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm just taking the advantage of plugging my own stuff, right? Our stuff.
Yeah.
Jimmy, do you mind showing us, just for those again that might watch this later too, just the one from Ireland where you animate and you do bring in the more quantitative measurements in the other.
So the one I did, or the one that the kids actually did?
Either one, as long as one of them had a graph, right? So that's what I'm kind of looking for, is did one of them have a graph?
I'll have to look and see. I'm trying to think.
Okay.
So the one I did with the kids over in Ireland using ThingLink, it was a blast. We had 2 hours to pull the thing together, and the kids collected all the video. They wrote the scripts. They interviewed people in the field, and then they put it together. It's on the one handout that she sent around. I think the one you were talking about let me share my screen again. I think it's this one.
I seem to remember a dam.
You remember what?
A dam, a
Yeah,
fish.
yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
So I will show you the end result. I think this is it. So I need to share. Let's see, where is it? For somebody who used to be a technology director, I hate technology way too much.
And if there's any other questions too, please do put them in the chat or feel free to ask.
And feel free to share my email if you haven't. Send me questions, you know, on any of this stuff. So can you see it says view 360? Can you see that image? Okay.
Yes.
So basically I put this together to try and show how Globe might use ThingLink to share data, to talk about some of the great projects that they do, to talk about different protocols and everything. So I just storyboarded this, and the storyboards for this are on the handout that you got. And it basically, can you hear that music? Drives me crazy. Hold on. I should have done one without the music. So basically, the way this one's laid out, you have to follow, you find the numbers and you click on them to find information. So I'm going to click on one. This just explains, let's see, is this the one that I did? Yeah, okay, here's the start. There are plenty of people, places, and things at the Chittenden Locks in Ballard, Washington, waiting for a Globe educator and students to set up Globe study protocols, observe, collect data, and make sense of the local environment to share with others through a Globe XR story. Did you hear that voiceover? Okay, good. And so then the idea here is to have people place have a kid place. I place things in here that would talk about different parts of the system. In this case, you click on here, it talks about how you can create stories or share data around the soil. So this is actually particularly relevant to Seattle, where about a mile from my house, there was a slide the other day and a house slid off the hill. So I think what you're talking about in terms of data might be this one. There are many stories to tell about the interface between technology, natural systems, and the hydrosphere, tied to the channeling and controlling of water with a dam and lock system. For example, protocols on salinity, temperature, and pH to collect data might be used to compare and contrast historical data, including data on salmon populations, to see how the lock ecosystem has changed over time. So I'm going to stop sharing that for now. And I could go through more of that. My point on sharing this with Globe educators was I put this together. And as an educator, I hate to do that. I want to see kids put this stuff together and make sense of their data and present it and share it out. And so that's why I shared this with the Globe educators, because I felt like it was a great way for you to create something. If you have access to a website or the Globe website, you can tell your Globe story of the research that your kids are doing. They could share it with the greater Globe community, but also get that thinking out into the bigger world to show how kids are using data, how they're thinking critically, how they're making sense of the environment outside their door. So you know, I think it's an incredibly powerful tool, and to be honest, I don't see as many people using it as I thought would. It's not very expensive to get a ThingLink license for a classroom or a school, and then kids know what to do. I mean, teaching kids how, like the kids over in Ireland, they caught it on like that and created the story about what they did over there.
So when I see the two things, I would be curious to know, okay, so let's just take an example of oxygen and temperature and the relationship between dissolved oxygen and temperature, right, over time. So is there a way to combine the systems thinking, taking a picture of the stream, talking about the positive and negative feedback about that, right? And then having a graph of globe data that shows over time that relationship that people could click on. So it would be like you're illustrating what you're seeing in the data, but you're illustrating it on the picture of the CIS AR.
Yeah, you definitely could. I mean, the SysAR is modeled after a tool that you can find online. It's an open source tool called Loopy, which basically lets you create simple systems models, but it's not an AR version. And that was part of the inspiration for me, thinking that'd be powerful to have a better version of that. And in fact, some of the kids, and I can include this in the follow-up that I send to the folks that were here, some of the kids at the Institute for Systems Biology created little systems models. Some of them even did linked out to a systems model that they did on Stella, I think. So they would explain some concept having to do with health, I think, some aspect of the pandemic, and then they created a systems model that you could then click and then go and play with the systems model within the thing link. So yeah, it's you can link a lot of different things. You can link Google Docs into ThingLink. You can link videos, you can still images, 3D models that can rotate. So yeah, you can tell that kind of story. And then the trick is working with the kids to figure out how best to tell that story so it flows. And that the activity that I sent you covered everything from creating storyboards so that kids just don't rush in and try to create it. I have a lot of experience with kids where doing storyboards first takes care of a lot more problems than just having to build it. And English teachers and other people can get involved, which is always good to go cross-curricular. So you feel free to use that activity. Please share back if you do with any kids. I'd love to see more and more people create these.
Okay, we are 2 minutes after the hour, whatever hour it is where you are. So I want to make sure that people feel like they can leave at any time, because I know people often have next meetings coming up. So I just want to offer that up, that we will not be offended if you leave at this time. If anybody has any last minute questions for Jamie, I think that this is definitely something I would love to revisit, because I do think there's a lot of potential for Globe students here. So I would love to talk to people about that more in the future. Anybody else interested? You can do a yes, no, raise your hand. Yeah, Grace has got 2 hands up. Awesome.
Well, feel free to reach out to me, any of you, and certainly go through Jennifer and keep her in the loop, because her and I have been talking about this forever. When we presented over in Ireland, Thailand was going to fly me over to work with the kids there, but we just couldn't work out the timing. And I'd worked with them before on Flexi, so I'd love to see a lot of people adopting. To me, it's the technology is just the ultimate lever, and if it gets kids outside, connects them with nature, all the better.